I won $400 million in the lottery. After years of being treated like a burden, I tested my family. I called saying I needed money for medication. My son blocked me. My daughter didn't care. But my 20-year-old grandson drove 400 miles with his last $500. What I did next changed everything. The lottery ticket sat in my purse for 3 days before I checked the numbers. At 72 years old, I'd been buying one ticket every Tuesday for the past 15 years, ever since my husband Gerald passed away. It was less about winning and more about having something to look forward to, a small ritual that gave shape to my weeks. I was sitting in my small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, eating dinner alone as usual, when I finally pulled up the winning numbers on my old tablet. The first number matched. Then the second. My fork clattered against the plate. Third number. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. All of them. Every single one. $400 million. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the tablet. I checked again. And again. I must have verified those numbers 20 times before the reality started to sink in. I'd won. Actually won. The biggest lottery jackpot in Ohio history. The first person I thought to call was my son, Mitchell. Then I stopped myself, finger hovering over his contact. A thought had been growing in my mind for months, maybe even years. A painful, nagging suspicion about where I truly stood in my children's lives. I decided to wait. The next morning, I drove to the lottery office in Cleveland. The process took hours. Paperwork, lawyers, financial advisors, security consultations. I chose the lump sum option and, after taxes, walked away with $240 million. The lottery officials offered to help me manage the media attention, but I requested complete anonymity. Ohio was one of the few states that allowed it, and I intended to use that to my full advantage. Then I went home and started planning. Mitchell was 50 years old and worked as a regional manager for a pharmaceutical company. He made good money, lived in a nice suburb of Chicago with his wife Denise and their 2 daughters. We talked maybe once a month, and those conversations rarely lasted more than 5 minutes. He was always busy, always in the middle of something important. My daughter, Patricia, was 48. She'd married a dentist named Roger and lived in a sprawling house in Austin, Texas. They had one son, my grandson Nathan. Patricia called even less frequently than Mitchell. Maybe every 6 weeks, and only when she needed something or wanted to complain about her husband. But Nathan. My sweet Nathan. He was 20 years old, attending community college in San Antonio while working 2 part-time jobs. He called me every Sunday without fail. Just to talk, to ask how I was doing, to tell me about his week. When he visited last Christmas, he'd driven 8 hours each way just to spend 2 days with me. He brought his own groceries so I wouldn't have to spend money feeding him. The plan formed slowly, carefully. I would test them. Really test them. Not with some elaborate scheme, but with a simple, honest request that any parent should be able to make to their children. I would tell them I needed help with medication costs. Nothing extravagant. Just enough to see who would show up. 3 weeks after winning, I called Mitchell first. It was a Thursday evening, around 7 his time. "Mom?" He sounded surprised. We didn't usually talk outside our monthly schedule. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm sorry to bother you." "What's wrong?" Already that edge of impatience in his voice. "I went to the doctor last week. My blood pressure medication needs to be adjusted, and the new prescription isn't fully covered by Medicare. I'm short about $500 this month." I kept my voice small, apologetic. Silence stretched between us. I could hear a television in the background, voices laughing. "Mom, we've talked about this. You need to budget better. Denise and I have our own expenses. The girls have college coming up." "I understand, I just thought. Have you looked into assistance programs? There are resources for seniors. I can send you some links." My chest tightened. "I've tried those. They have waiting lists. I just need a little help until. I really can't right now. We just bought a new car and the timing is bad. Maybe next month." He paused. "Look, I have to go. We're about to eat dinner." "Of course. I love you." "Yeah, you too." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone for a long time. Part of me had expected exactly this, but hearing it still hurt like a physical blow. The next day, I called Patricia. "Mother." She never called me Mom anymore. "This isn't a great time." "I'll be quick. I had a doctor's appointment and my medication costs have gone up. I'm short about $500. I was hoping? Seriously? You're calling me for money? I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Do you have any idea what things cost these days? Roger and I just put in a new pool. Everything is expensive. Can't you just use your savings? I don't really have savings, honey. You know I live on Social Security. She sighed dramatically. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you should have planned better for retirement. Why don't you ask Mitchell? I did. He said he couldn't help right now. Then I definitely can't. We're trying to save for a trip to Europe this summer. You'll figure something out. You always do. Her tone suggested I was being manipulative. I have to go. Roger's calling me. She hung up before I could say goodbye. 2 for 2. My own children, both successful and comfortable, couldn't spare $500 for their mother's medication. Wouldn't spare it. I waited until Sunday to call Nathan. He answered on the second ring, like always. Grandma. I was just thinking about you. How are you feeling? Just hearing his voice made my eyes sting. I'm all right, sweetheart. How's school? We talked for 20 minutes about his classes, his jobs, a girl he'd met in his biology class. He asked detailed questions about my week, actually listening to my answers. Finally, I brought up the medication. Honey, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a bind. What's wrong? Immediate concern, no hesitation. I explained the situation, keeping the details the same. $500? He said. Grandma, of course. I can help you. I get paid tomorrow from the restaurant. I have about $520 in my checking account. You can have all of it. My throat constricted. Nathan, no. That's your money. You work so hard. You're my grandma. I love you. What else am I going to do, let you go without medicine? He said it like the answer was obvious. Actually, you know what? I'm coming to see you. I can bring the money in person, make sure you're really okay. The doctor said blood pressure, right? That's serious. Nathan, you don't have to drive all the way here. You can just transfer. I want to see you anyway. It's been too long. I'll leave after my shift tomorrow night. Should get there Saturday morning. That's a 400-mile drive, sweetheart. So? I'll blast some music, grab some coffee. It'll be fun. I miss you, Grandma. After we hung up, I cried for the first time since Gerald died. Not sad tears. Angry ones. How had I raised 2 children who turned out so cold, but somehow my grandson had become this person? This kind, generous soul who would drive through the night for me? Saturday morning arrived. I'd barely slept, going over everything in my mind. Nathan pulled up at 8:30 in his beat-up Honda Civic, looking exhausted but smiling. He hugged me tight, the way he'd done since he was little. Let me look at you, I said, holding him at arm's length. You're too thin. Are you eating enough? I'm fine, Grandma. Stop worrying about me. I'm here to worry about you. We sat in my small living room, and he handed me an envelope with $500 in cash. I stopped at an ATM in Cincinnati. Figured cash would be easier than a check. I took the envelope, weighing it in my hands. This represented weeks of work for him. Tips from the restaurant, hours at the campus bookstore. His gas money, his food money, his everything. Nathan, I need to tell you something. He looked at me with those earnest eyes, so much like his grandfather's. I don't need this money. Confusion flickered across his face. What do you mean? You said, I was testing your parents. And you. I pulled out my phone and showed him the bank app I'd set up, the one showing the lottery winnings. I'd been practicing how to explain this. His eyes went wide as he processed the numbers. Grandma, is this real? I won the lottery a month ago. 400 million. After taxes, 240. I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to know who really cared about me, not about what I could give them. Nathan stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. You're a millionaire? I am. And you tested us? He wasn't angry. Just processing. I called your father and your mother first. I told them the exact same thing I told you. That I needed $500 for medication. What did they say? I recounted both conversations, watching his expression shift from surprise to disappointment to something harder. They didn't help you? They didn't even offer. Your father sent me links to assistance programs. Your mother told me I should have planned better. Nathan stood up, pacing my small living room. But you said you'd give them the same test? I gave them the chance to show up. They failed. You drove 400 miles with money you couldn't afford to give. That tells me everything I need to know. He sat back down, running his hands through his hair. So what happens now? Now I change my will. I've already spoken to an estate attorney. The house I'm buying, the trust fund I'm setting up, the investment accounts, all of it goes to you. Your parents get nothing. Grandma, let me finish. I'm not doing this to be cruel. I'm doing this because you're the only one who loved me when I had nothing to give. You're the only one who showed up. I took his hands. I'm also going to pay for your education. All of it? You want to transfer to a 4-year school? Done. You want to go to graduate school? Done. You never have to work those exhausting jobs again unless you want to. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I didn't come here for money. I know you didn't. That's exactly why you're getting it. Over the next few months, things moved quickly. I purchased a beautiful house in a quiet suburb of Columbus, nothing too ostentatious, but comfortable. 4 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, a garden. Nathan helped me move in during his spring break. The house hunting process had been an adventure. My real estate agent, a sharp woman named Teresa, didn't ask questions when I showed up pre-approved for a cash purchase. She showed me 15 properties before I found the right one. It had a sunroom where I could read in the mornings and a backyard with enough space for the vegetable garden I'd always wanted but never had room for in my apartment. Nathan arrived the day the movers came. He'd taken time off from both jobs, insisting he wanted to help. We unpacked boxes together, him telling me stories about his classes while we arranged books on shelves. He found a photo of Gerald and me from our wedding day, both of us young and hopeful. I wish I'd known Grandpa better, he said softly. You were only 5 when he passed. But he loved you so much. You have his eyes, you know. And his heart. We hung the photo in the living room, right above the fireplace. Setting up the trust was more complex than buying the house. My attorney, a meticulous man named Lawrence Sterling, walked me through every detail. He'd handled estates for lottery winners before and knew exactly how to structure things to protect Nathan's future. You're certain about excluding your other children? He asked during one of our meetings. Completely certain. They may challenge this. Claim undue influence or diminished capacity. Which is why I'm having a full psychological evaluation done. I want documentation proving I'm of sound mind. I'd already scheduled appointments with 2 different psychiatrists. Both would evaluate my mental competency. Both would conclude I was sharp as ever. Lawrence nodded approvingly. Smart. Very smart. You're making this extremely difficult to contest. The trust for Nathan was structured in layers. Immediate access to funds for education and living expenses. Larger distributions at age 25, 30, and 35. Full control of the remaining principal at 40. Lawrence suggested this approach to ensure Nathan would have guidance as he matured but wouldn't be overwhelmed by too much too soon. I also established a foundation in Gerald's name, focused on helping elderly people afford medication and healthcare. The irony wasn't lost on me. The Gerald Morrison Foundation would receive $50 million initially, with more to come from my estate. I hired a director, a former social worker named Thomas who understood exactly what seniors faced when choosing between medicine and food. Our first board meeting was emotional. Thomas presented data on how many elderly Americans skip medications due to cost. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of thousands of people, just like I'd pretended to be, making impossible choices every month. We can make a real difference, Thomas said, his eyes bright with passion. With this funding, we can help thousands of people immediately. Then let's get started, I replied. Nathan transferred to Ohio State University that fall, majoring in business. I'd offered to get him an apartment near campus, but he insisted on something modest. We found a 2-bedroom place he could afford with his trust stipend, even though he could have bought the entire building. I don't want to be that guy, he explained. The one who suddenly has money and acts like he's better than everyone. You could never be that guy. Still, I want to earn things. The education help is amazing, Grandma. More than amazing. But I need to feel like I'm building something myself too. He got a part-time job anyway, working at the campus library. Not because he needed the money, but because he wanted the structure. I'd never been more proud. He still came over every Sunday for dinner. Some things didn't need to change. I'd cook his favorites, pot roast and mashed potatoes, apple pie for dessert. We'd eat and talk for hours, about everything and nothing. He told me about his classes, his friends, a girl named Rebecca he'd met in his economics course. She volunteers at a homeless shelter, he said, his face lighting up. Every Saturday morning. Just because she thinks it's important. She sounds special. She is. He blushed, looking so much like Gerald had when we first met. During one of these dinners, about 6 months after the move, Nathan brought up his parents. Have you heard from Dad lately? He asked carefully. Not since that first call. The one where he suddenly wanted to visit. He asked me about you last week. Wanted to know if you'd mentioned any health problems, any medication issues. Nathan paused. I think he knows something's different. He kept pressing, asking weird questions about where you live now. What did you tell him? That you were fine and had moved to a nicer place. I didn't mention the lottery. I figured if you wanted them to know, you'd tell them yourself. Thank you for that. Nathan pushed his food around his plate. Do you think you'll ever tell them? About the money? Eventually they'll figure it out. People talk. Someone will see something, make a connection. I sipped my water. But I'm in no hurry. It's going to be bad when they find out. You know that, right? I do. But that's their problem, not mine. He nodded slowly. Mom called me too. First time in 6 months. Also asking about you, but in this vague casual way. Like she was fishing for information. They sense something's changed. They just don't know what. It feels weird, keeping this secret from them. You're not keeping a secret. You're respecting my privacy. There's a difference. The Foundation's first big event was a medication assistance fair. We rented a community center and invited seniors to come learn about our programs. Over 300 people showed up. I volunteered at the registration table, just another gray-haired woman in comfortable shoes. An elderly man approached, leaning heavily on a cane. His hands shook as he filled out the paperwork. What medications do you need help with, sir? I asked gently. Heart pills. Diabetes stuff. It's almost $900 a month, and I only get $1,200 from Social Security. His voice cracked. My daughter says I should just take half doses to make it last longer. My chest tightened. We can help you. That's exactly why we're here. By the end of the day, we'd enrolled 240 people in assistance programs. Thomas was ecstatic. I was heartbroken and hopeful in equal measure. Heartbroken that so many people needed help. Hopeful that we could provide it. I thought about Mitchell and Patricia constantly during these events. How easily they could have helped me. How easily they could help others but chose not to. The distance between who they were and who they could have been seemed vast. Christmas that first year was quiet. Nathan came over, bringing Rebecca with him. She was lovely, warm and genuine, with an easy laugh. She brought homemade cookies and a gift she'd clearly chosen carefully, a beautiful journal for me to write in. Nathan says you have amazing stories about your life, she said. I thought maybe you'd want to write some of them down. That's very thoughtful, dear. We spent the evening playing board games and watching old movies. Rebecca fit seamlessly into our little family. She didn't ask about the house or the money. She just seemed happy to be there. After they left, I sat alone in my beautiful living room, looking at the Christmas tree Nathan had insisted we decorate together. No calls from Mitchell or Patricia. Not even a text message. Just silence. I opened the journal Rebecca had given me and started writing. About Gerald. About raising Mitchell and Patricia. About the slow drift apart, the missed calls and forgotten birthdays. About Nathan and his Sunday visits. About the lottery ticket and the test. Writing it all down made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I could see the pattern clearly, years of neglect punctuated by brief moments when my children remembered I existed. Usually when they needed something, I realized. A babysitter for the grandkids. Someone to vent to about their problems. A birthday card with a check inside. But never just to talk. Never just because they loved me. The journal became a habit. I wrote in it several times a week, documenting everything. Lawrence had suggested keeping records, in case Mitchell or Patricia tried to claim I was incompetent when they eventually found out about the lottery. But it became more than that. It became therapy, a way to process decades of hurt I'd been pushing down. Nathan noticed the change in me. You seem lighter somehow, he said one Sunday. I think I'm finally letting go of things I should have released years ago. The stuff with Dad and Aunt Patricia, that, and the guilt I carried about it. Wondering if I'd been a bad mother, if I'd done something wrong to make them so distant. I smiled at him. Writing helps. Rebecca's gift was wiser than she knew. Spring arrived, and with it, my first attempt at the vegetable garden. I'd never had space for one before, and I threw myself into it with enthusiasm. Tomatoes, peppers, zucchini, herbs. Nathan helped me build raised beds, getting dirt under his fingernails and laughing when I accidentally sprayed him with the hose. Grandpa would have loved this, he said, surveying our work. He would have. He always wanted a garden too. We talked about it. When we retire, we said. But retirement came with doctor's bills and a fixed income, and a garden seemed like a luxury. It's not a luxury. It's joy. Yes, I agreed, looking at the neat rows of soil, ready for seeds. Yes, it is. Mitchell and Patricia had no idea about any of it. We maintained our minimal contact. They never asked if I'd figured out the medication situation. Never followed up. I could have been dying for all they knew. A year and a half after winning, Mitchell called me out of the blue. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Mom, I've been thinking. We don't see you enough. Why don't you come stay with us for Thanksgiving this year? The girls would love to see their grandmother. Something in his tone felt off. Too cheerful, too interested. That's sweet, Mitchell. But I'm actually having Thanksgiving here this year. Nathan's coming. Nathan? He sounded surprised. You two are close? Very close. He visits all the time. Huh. Well, maybe we could come there? It's been ages since I've seen your place. It's quite small, Mitchell. I don't think I could fit everyone. Oh. Disappointment. Well, maybe we could at least visit sometime soon. See how you're doing. Sure. Maybe sometime. The call nagged at me. Mitchell never suggested visits. In fact, he'd actively avoided them for years, always claiming work was too busy or the girls had activities. Something had changed, and I suspected Nathan had accidentally mentioned something during one of their infrequent conversations. I called Nathan that evening. Your father just called. Wanted to come for Thanksgiving. First time he suggested visiting in 3 years. Did you tell him about the money? No. But I wonder if he's heard something. Your mother called last week too. Also suddenly interested in my well-being. Nathan was quiet for a moment. I might have messed up, Grandma. My stomach dropped. What happened? Dad called a few weeks ago. He was asking about you, and I mentioned you'd moved to a nicer place. I didn't give him the address or anything, but I said you seemed really happy and had fixed up a house with a garden, he sighed. He got really interested after that. Started asking how you could afford it, if you'd gotten an inheritance or something. What did you say? That I didn't know your finances. Which is technically true, sort of. I know about the lottery, but I don't know all the details of your accounts or whatever. He paused. I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. It's all right, sweetheart. They were going to find out eventually. This just speeds up the timeline. Are you ready for that? For them to know? I thought about it. The house was bought. The trust was established. The foundation was running. The will was airtight, reviewed by 3 different attorneys. My psychological evaluations were complete and filed away. All the pieces were in place. Yes, I said. I think I am. 2 weeks later, Patricia called. Mother, Roger and I are planning a trip to Ohio next month. We thought we'd stop by, take you to dinner. That would be lovely, dear. Great. Nathan mentioned you moved? Could you send me your new address? There it was. Nathan had mentioned the move in passing during one of their rare conversations. She'd probably pressed him for details, the way she always did when she wanted information. Of course. When I texted her the address, she responded immediately. This is a nice neighborhood. You moved? I got a better place. More comfortable for my old bones. She didn't respond after that, but I could imagine her looking up the property values, doing the math, trying to figure out how her mother on Social Security could afford a house in this area. I spent the next few days preparing. Not physically, the house was always clean. But mentally, emotionally, getting ready for the confrontation I knew was coming. I practiced what I'd say, how I'd explain. I reviewed the timeline in my mind. The lottery win. The test. Their failures. Nathan's success. Lawrence called to check in. Are you sure you want to tell them directly? You could let them find out through other channels. No. I want to see their faces when they realize what they lost. That's pretty cold, Georgia. Is it? Or is it just honest? He didn't have an answer for that. They showed up on a Saturday afternoon, Patricia and Roger, unannounced despite the dinner plans being for the following week. I was in my garden when they pulled up in their Mercedes, tending to my tomato plants. The garden had become my refuge, a place where things grew if you cared for them properly. Unlike relationships, apparently. Patricia's face when she saw the house was priceless. Shock, confusion, suspicion all playing across her features. Roger looked uncomfortable, like he already knew this visit was a mistake but had been dragged along anyway. Mother? This is your house? It is. Come in, I'll make tea. They followed me inside, both of them looking around like they'd entered a museum. The furniture was nice but not extravagant. Art on the walls that I actually liked, not expensive pieces chosen for status but paintings from local artists that spoke to me. A piano I was learning to play, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was raising children and working. Books everywhere, finally enough shelf space for my collection. Patricia's eyes caught on everything. The hardwood floors. The updated kitchen with granite countertops. The sunroom with comfortable furniture and plants. Her mental calculator was working overtime. How did you afford this? Patricia asked, dropping any pretense of subtlety. I managed. You said you had no savings? You said you couldn't afford medication. I poured water into the kettle, taking my time, letting the tension build. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. I said I was short $500 that month. Which was true, in a sense. I was testing you. Testing me? I called you and your brother when I needed help. Neither of you could spare $500. Or wouldn't. But Nathan drove 400 miles with his last $500 to make sure I was okay. Roger shifted uncomfortably. Patricia's face flushed red, anger replacing confusion. So you what, lied to us? I gave you an opportunity to show you cared. You failed. This is ridiculous. Where did the money come from? Her voice was rising now, the composure she usually wore like armor cracking. I won the lottery. $240 million after taxes. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Roger's eyes went wide. The tea kettle started whistling, a shrill sound that matched the tension in the room. You won the lottery, she repeated flatly. 18 months ago. And you didn't tell us? I wanted to see who loved me for me. Turns out, only Nathan did. That's not fair. Patricia's voice rose sharply. We're your children. Exactly. You're my children. When I needed $500 for medicine, you told me to budget better and that you were saving for a trip to Europe. Mitchell sent me links to charity programs. I poured the tea, my hands steady despite the anger coursing through me. You know what Nathan was saving for when I called him? Nothing. He barely had $500 to his name. But he gave me all of it without hesitation. We didn't know you'd won the lottery. That was the point. I set the teacup down with more force than necessary. You should have helped me either way. Roger stood up. Patricia, let's go. No. She turned to me, her expression desperate now, the anger replaced by fear. Mom, we can fix this. We were wrong, okay? We should have helped. But you can't cut us out over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was years of phone calls cut short, visits you were too busy for, birthdays you forgot. The medication was just the final confirmation of what I already knew. I met her eyes. I was never a priority for you. I was an obligation. A box to check. Call Mom once a month so you don't feel guilty. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you called just to talk? When was the last time you visited without needing something? She couldn't answer. We both knew there was no answer. Roger stood up. Patricia, let's go. No. She turned to me, her expression desperate now. Mom, we can fix this. We were wrong, okay? We should have helped. But you can't cut us out over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was years of phone calls cut short, visits you were too busy for, birthdays you forgot. The medication was just the final confirmation. So Nathan gets everything? Her voice turned bitter. Your precious perfect grandson? Nathan gets what he earned. He showed up. He cared. He loved me when I had nothing. We love you. Do you? Or do you love $240 million? She couldn't answer that. We both knew the truth. They left shortly after. No tea was drunk. No dinner plans were made. Mitchell called that evening. Patricia had clearly told him everything. Mom, we need to talk about this lottery situation. There's nothing to talk about, Mitchell. You can't give everything to Nathan. We're your children. We have a legal right. Actually, you don't. I've spoken with several attorneys. My will is airtight. You'll get nothing, and you can't contest it successfully. This is because of the medication thing? Mom, I'm sorry. I should have helped. I was stressed about work and I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to tell me to budget better while you were buying a new car. That's not fair. Life rarely is, Mitchell. You taught me that when you blocked my number for 3 months last year because I called too often. Twice a week was too often for your mother. I didn't block you. You did. I called your office. Your secretary told me you'd added my number to your spam filter. He had nothing to say to that. I'm not doing this to punish you, I continued. I'm doing this because Nathan is the only one who deserves it. He's the only one who treated me like a person instead of an obligation. So that's it? We're just cut off? You cut yourself off years ago. I'm just making it official. He hung up without saying goodbye. Just like always. The next few months were difficult. Both Mitchell and Patricia tried different approaches. Guilt trips, anger, bargaining, promises to do better. Patricia showed up at my house twice more, once with tears, once with threats of legal action. I stood firm. Nathan struggled with it. Grandma, they're still your kids. Maybe you should give them another chance? Sweetheart, I gave them chances for years. They only want one now because they know what they're missing. I feel guilty. Like I'm taking something that should be theirs. You're not taking anything. I'm giving you what you earned through years of kindness and love. They had the same opportunities. They chose differently. The foundation I started in Gerald's name grew quickly. We helped thousands of seniors afford their medications. I volunteered there twice a week, meeting people who reminded me of who I could have been. People who really were struggling, whose children really had abandoned them. Nathan graduated from Ohio State with honors. He got a job with a nonprofit, something that mattered to him. He didn't need to chase money. He had enough. More importantly, he had purpose. He met a girl named Rebecca, a social worker. They got engaged 2 years later. Patricia and Mitchell weren't invited to the wedding. Are you sure? I asked Nathan when he was addressing invitations. They don't get to miss your life for years and then show up for the big moments, Grandma. That's not how family works. Hearing him say that, I knew I'd done the right thing. The wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate, filled with people who actually cared about each other. Nathan and Rebecca wrote their own vows. When Nathan promised to always show up, to always be there, his eyes met mine across the room. I was 78 years old at the wedding. My health was good, but I knew time was finite. I'd updated my will again, splitting everything between Nathan and the foundation. Rebecca was included now too. Mitchell sent a card to the wedding. Just a card, no gift, no real congratulations. Inside, he'd written, "Hope you're happy with your choices." Patricia didn't acknowledge it at all. 3 years after the wedding, I was diagnosed with heart disease. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but a reminder that endings come for everyone. Nathan took me to every appointment, asked questions the doctors didn't expect from a young man, held my hand during the scary parts. Mitchell found out through Facebook. He called, his voice tight with worry that might have been genuine or might have been about the inheritance. "Mom, Nathan posted you're sick. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have come?" Silence. That's what I thought. I'm still your son. Are you? What have you done to earn that title in the last decade? This is cruel. You're being deliberately cruel. No, Mitchell. Cruel was telling your mother to budget better when she needed help. Cruel was blocking her number. Cruel was forgetting her birthday 3 years in a row. I'm just being honest. When you die, I'm contesting that will. Feel free to try. You'll spend more on lawyers than you'll ever get. I made sure of that. He hung up. It was the last time we spoke. Patricia tried a different approach. She started sending cards, calling weekly, asking about my health. It was too late and too transparent, but part of me appreciated the effort, however hollow. "You know I can't change the will," I told her during one call. "I know. I don't want you to die thinking I don't care." "Do you care? Or do you care about what people will think if you don't seem to care?" She didn't answer. My health stabilized. The doctors were optimistic. I might have another 10 years, maybe more. I intended to use them well. The foundation expanded. We started a program pairing young volunteers with isolated seniors. Watching those relationships develop, seeing young people choose kindness, it healed something in me. Nathan and Rebecca had a daughter 2 years after my diagnosis. They named her Georgia, after me. My middle name. Holding my great-granddaughter, watching Nathan be the father I'd hoped Mitchell would be, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe. Or justice. Or just the satisfaction of knowing I'd made the right choice. Patricia came to the hospital when Georgia was born. Uninvited, but there. She stood in the doorway, watching Nathan with his daughter, and I saw something crack in her expression. "He's good at this," she said quietly. "He is." I wasn't. With him, I mean. I was always so focused on other things. I know. Do you think it's too late? To have a relationship with him? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was 58 now, gray threading through her hair, lines around her eyes. She looked tired and sad and small. "That's not my decision to make. It's Nathan's." She nodded slowly. "The money thing. I get why you did it. I don't like it, but I get it." "Do you?" "You wanted to know who would show up." "I didn't. Nathan did." She swallowed hard. "I was a terrible daughter. You were absent." "That's not quite the same thing." "It's close enough." She moved further into the room. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For not being there, for only calling when I wanted something, for teaching Nathan that family was optional. I'm sorry." It was the first real apology she'd ever given me. Apologies are nice. But they don't change anything. "I know." She looked at baby Georgia, tears in her eyes. "Can I at least try to be a better grandmother than I was a mother?" I looked at Nathan. He was watching this exchange, Rebecca beside him, their daughter in his arms. "That's up to Nathan and Rebecca." Nathan studied his mother for a long moment. Then he held out Georgia. "Want to hold her?" Patricia's hands shook as she took her granddaughter. She cried, quiet tears that fell onto the baby's blanket. Maybe some people could change. Maybe it took losing everything to learn what mattered. I didn't know. What I did know was that the will wasn't changing. Patricia's inheritance remained 0. But perhaps Georgia deserved to know her grandmother, even an imperfect one trying to do better late in life. Mitchell never did come around. He sent a gift for Georgia, expensive and impersonal. He didn't visit. According to Nathan, he'd started telling people I'd suffered from dementia, that I'd been manipulated into changing my will. The story made him look better, I suppose. The wrong son with a confused mother. Let him tell his stories. I knew the truth. I'm 83 now. The heart disease is managed. I take my medications, all of which I can easily afford. Nathan and Rebecca live 10 minutes away. Georgia is 5 years old and calls me Gigi. I see them almost every day. The foundation has helped over 50,000 seniors. We've expanded into 12 states. When I die, it will continue, funded in perpetuity. Patricia visits once a month. She brings Georgia gifts, asks about my health, tries to make up for lost time. She knows she's not in the will. She's accepted it, or at least stopped fighting it. Maybe her apology was real. Maybe she genuinely wants a relationship now. I'll never know for certain. Mitchell hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. If I should have given them more chances, been more forgiving. Then I remember that night Nathan drove through darkness for 400 miles, carrying money he couldn't afford to give, just to make sure his grandmother was okay. That's love. Real, uncomplicated love. Everything else is just noise. My lawyer has the will in a secure vault. Nathan knows where everything is, how everything works. When my time comes, there will be no surprises, no dramatic reading. Just the simple truth: I left everything to the person who loved me when I had nothing. $400 million bought me a lot of things. A nice house, financial security, the ability to help thousands of people. But the most valuable thing it bought me was clarity. The absolute certainty of knowing who my real family was. And it turns out, real family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. Who drives through the night. Who loves you when you're nobody special. Nathan showed up. He gets everything. And I have absolutely no regrets.